With Monster Hunter World Iceborne comes Master Rank, a challenge that will test every hunter, but with the right gear and builds, hunters can overcome anything. I'm Darkblade, and we're back with even more amazing builds for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at 4-set beginner builds for the Sword and Shield. The Sword and Shield is a jack of all trades weapon, being able to make use of pretty much every gameplay aspect in Monster Hunter World. It can make use of slicing attacks, blunt attacks, unique clutch claw attacks, and use items even while the weapon is drawn. The builds in this video will demonstrate a variety of playstyles that the Sword and Shield can make use of. Now a disclaimer though for this series, as Iceborne is still young, most hunters may not have had time to farm everything they need for the most high-end endgame builds. So this series instead focuses on 4-set beginner builds, highlighting some of the amazing armor designs, while at the same time helping new players get through to the end of Iceborne's story. As a result, these builds will not feature Elder Dragon loot or augmentations, and most of the customization with them come in the form of different jewels, charms and weaponry. So the first build I use is the Banbaro Elementalist build. This build is a DPS focused build with the aim of providing a hunter with high raw attack. It is also probably one of the easiest builds to craft when you're first starting off Iceborne. So for this you'll need the entire Banbaro set, which includes the Banbaro Helm Beta, Mel Alpha, Vambraces Alpha, Coil Beta and Grease Beta. I'm also using a Handicraft Charm free, and for my weapon I'm using the Chrome Knight Sword free. As for your jewels, you've got a few to play around with here, and of course depending on your jewel collection you may have to switch them out. Firstly, I've gone for an Elementalist jewel to give us that non-elemental boost skill. I've then gone for a Handicraft jewel and a Sharp jewel to give us a little bit of extra sharpness, as well as provide us with the Protective Polish skill. I've then gone for a Guardian jewel to max out the Offensive Guard skill on this build. This also came with a byproduct of an attack jewel, to which I've added a few more attack jewels to boost our attack boost. I've then gone for a Vitality jewel to max out the health boost of this build, and finally some Iron Wall jewels to provide us the Guard skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, which will be 200 health when you're on a hunt and taking all your relevant consumables. You'll have an attack of 420 with purple sharpness, you'll have 5% affinity and no element. As for your defense, you're exceedingly strong against ice and water, but unfortunately weak to the other elements. As for the skills, you have attack boost level 4, attack boost increases the raw attack of our build, and at level 4 or above you also get an extra 5% affinity. You have Handicraft level 4, Handicraft increases the sharpness of whatever weapon we're using with a build. You have Health boost level 3, increasing our health to that potential maximum of 200. You have Guard level 3, increasing the effectiveness when it comes to blocking attacks. You have Offensive Guard level 3. Offensive Guard is a wonderful little buff that when you perfectly time a block, so you block at the last moment, it will also increase our raw attack. You have Resentment level 2, a byproduct of the gear, but it's still useful. Resentment kicks in when we have a portion of red health on our health bar. When this is active, it will also increase our raw attack of the build. You have Mushroom-mancer level 2. This is a byproduct of the gear, it's not really needed, although it could still be considered useful. Mushroom-mancer allows us to consume raw mushrooms for different effects. You have Speed Eating level 1, again a byproduct of the gear, but allows us to consume potions and that quite quickly. You have Protective Polish level 1. Protective Polish allows us to put a protective coating over our sharpness gauge when we sharpen our weapon, preventing any sharpness loss for a small duration of time, so it allows us to keep that purple sharpness for a longer period. And you'll have Non-Elemental Boost level 1. Non-Elemental Boost increases the attack of our build when the weapon we are using has no element, or its element or ailment is hidden, as is the case with the Chrome Knight Sword free. So as you can see, it is a pretty straightforward build. It does focus on raw attack over anything else, combining attack boost, offensive guard, resentment, and the non-elemental boost skills. It also has a few defensive skills thanks to attack boost and the guard skill, but nonetheless this is a pretty simple build to get you started with the Sword and Shield when you're going into Monster Hunter World Iceborne story. It can take a little while getting used to activating the offensive guard with this build, but once you've got it down, the DPS potential for this build increases. But anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the Vespoid Paralysis build. This build is all about crowd control, making use of the paralysis element to paralyze a monster, leaving them open for your more accurate attacks. So for this build you'll need the entire Vespoid set, which includes the Vespoid Helm Beta, Mel Beta, Vambraces Beta, Coil Beta and Grease Beta. I'm also using the Handicraft Charm free, and for my weapon I'm using the Naga Axe 2, which is found in the Great Gyros Sword and Shield tree. As for your jaws, you've got a few to play around with here. Firstly, the mandatory ones would be Paralyzer jaws to increase the paralysis rating of this build. I've then gone for Tenderizer jaws to max out the weakness exploit skill, a sharp jaw to provide us that protected polish, and then finally I've gone for Vitality jaws to give us that health boost, one of which had a byproduct of a Challenger jaw to give us a point in the Agitator skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, which will be 200 health when you're on a hunt and taking all your relevant consumables. You'll have an attack of 357 with white sharpness. You'll have 20% affinity, which will be actually 70% affinity when you're on a hunt and you're attacking monster weak points that have been tenderized first. This will be even a little bit higher as well with Agitator activated as well. You have a paralysis rating of 400, and when it comes to your defense, you're strong against every single element except for fire. As for your skills, you'll have Paralysis Attack level 4. Paralysis Attack increases the paralysis rating and damage of this build, as well as the build-up of the element. You have Health Boost level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3. Weakness Exploit increases our affinity by a set percentage when we're attacking monster weak points, and should those weak points be tenderized first through Clutch Claw attacks, this affinity increase is increased even further. You have Handicraft level 3, increasing the sharpness of our weapon. Paralysis resistance level 1, a byproduct of the gear but helps resist paralysis effects. You have Windproof level 1, again another byproduct of the gear but helps resist wind effects, so it's useful for taking on Flying Wyverns. You have Critical Draw level 1, again another byproduct, but increases the affinity of our attack when we perform draw attacks. It's not that useful with the Sword and Shield in all honesty. You have Agitator level 1, this is a byproduct of our duels. Agitator is a wonderful little buff in Iceborne that kicks in when a monster becomes enraged, and it will increase our raw attack as well as our affinity. You have Quick Sheath level 1, again another byproduct but allows us to sheath our weapon a little bit more quickly, and you have Protected Polish level 1. So there you have it. As you can see, it is a pretty straightforward build. It's not the highest damage out there, but the fact that you can paralyze a monster quite easily with this build means that you should be able to focus your attacks on the monster weak points for maximum damage. Of course, when using this build, taking into account a monster's ailment weakness is recommended, as this build won't work against monsters who are very resistant to being paralyzed. Nonetheless, when you consider that the Sword and Shield can also knock out monsters when using its shield attacks, it means that this build has two forms of crowd control. Use your sword when you want to paralyze, and then go for your shield when you want to knock out. Rotate them during a hunt, and the monster you're hunting should be crowd controlled quite often. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is a little bit of a build I wouldn't normally go for, at least for going through Monster Hunter World Story, which is the Zitsyaku support build. This build works all around the wide range skill, providing a support role for when you're hunting with others. Also, because the Zitsyaku armor does come with the water element skill, this build also makes use of a water elemental weapon. So for this you'll need the entire Zitsyaku armor, which includes the headgear beta, mail alpha, Vambraces alpha, coil alpha, and greaves alpha. I'm also using the handicraft charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Laguna Blossom 2, which is found in the coral puke tree. As for the jaws, you've got a few to play around with here. Firstly, I've gone for Tenderizer jaws to give us that weakness exploit. I've then gone for Vitality jaws to give us a little bit of health boost. One of them came with the byproduct of a Challenger jaw. I've then gone for a Sated jaw to provide us that free meal skill, Gobbler jaw for the speed eating skill, and a Sharp jaw to provide us that protected polish. So if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 130 health, 100 stamina, which would be 180 health when you're on a hunt and taking all your relevant consumables. You have an attack of 357 with purple sharpness. You have no affinity, although this potentially can be 50% affinity when you're going for tenderized monster weak points, and you'll have a water rating of 540. As for your defense, you're neutral against every single element except for ice and thunder, to which you're weak against. As for the skills, you'll have Wide Range level 5. This is the main skill for this build. Wide Range at level 5 allows the full effect of whatever item you consume to be passed on to your allies who are nearby. So when you take a potion, they'll also receive the healing effects. This is the main skill behind support builds. And with the Sword and Shield being able to use items with the weapon drawn, it means it can really capitalize on this skill to provide decent support builds. But anyway, this build also has a few damage options. It has Water Attack level 4, increasing the water rating of this build. You have Weakness Exploit level 3, Handicraft level 3, Sleep Resistance level 2, a byproduct of the gear but helps resist sleep effects. You have Stun Resistance level 2, again another byproduct but helps resist stun effects. You have Health Boost level 2. It would have been nice to get this to level 3, but we have limited jewels to play with. You have Constitution level 2. This is a byproduct but reduces the stamina cost of set stamina moves like dodging. You have Speed Eating level 2. Again, this would be nice to get to level 3. Speed Eating works well on support builds as it allows you to drink your potions and other consumables quickly, freeing up the time that you're vulnerable when you actually take your potions and that. You have Free Element level 1. This is just a byproduct of the gear and it's not really needed on this build as the weapon we're using has a element that is already revealed. Free Element allows weapons that have their element or ailment hidden to become active. But anyway, you also have Agitated level 1. Free Meal level 1. Free Meal is a wonderful quality of life skill. It allows you to drink a potion or other consumable, and the skill gives your hunter a chance of not actually consuming that said potion or consumable but still receive the effects of it. So say you take a max potion, your health will be maxed out but there's a chance the max potion won't be used up. And finally you'll have Protected Polish level 1. So as you can see, this is a support build aimed at helping other hunters out more than anything. Yes, it does have a few DPS options thanks to water attack and weakness exploit, but it also limits you in what monsters you can take on. If they're very resistant to water, this may not be the best. But when that's the case, as the elemental attacks are really only utilised by your sword attacks, switch over and make use of shield attacks only. But the main idea about this build was to provide support to groups of hunters. You'll be the healer of the group, consuming potions and that to keep your other friends alive. But if you're playing solo, there are more efficient builds out there. Which brings us to our fourth and final build, and my personal favourite out of the Sword and Shield, which is the Tigrex all-round build. This is a wonderful all-round build combining DPS and quality of life skills to help you easily get through Monster Hunter World Iceborne story. So for this you'll need the entire Tigrex set, which includes the Tigrex Helm Beta, Mel Beta, Braces Alpha, Tassets Beta and Greaves Beta. I'm also using Demolition Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Boomin Barrage, which is the Sword and Shield found in the Brachydios Sword and Shield tree. As for your jewels, you've got a fair few to play around with here. Firstly, I've gone for Earplug jewels to max out the Earplug skill of this build. I've then gone for Tenderizer jewels to max out Weakness Exploit, Expert jewels to increase the critical eye of this build, Sated jewels to increase the Free Meal skill of this build, which we'll talk about in a bit. Normally you can only get to level 1. And finally I've gone for Vitality jewels to increase the health boost of this build. So if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 130 health, 100 stamina, which would be 180 health when you're on a hunt and taking all your relevant consumables. You'll have an attack of 388 with white sharpness. You'll have 20% affinity, which will be 70% affinity when you're on a hunt, and you're going for monster weak points that have been tenderized first, and you'll have a blast rating of 440. As for your defense, you're strong against fire, neutral against water and ice, but unfortunately weak to dragon and thunder. As for the skills, you have Earplugs level 5. Earplugs is a wonderful quality of life skill. This prevents your hunter from feeling the effects of monster roars altogether. So when a monster roars, normally a hunter would be stunned if they didn't have earplugs, but with earplugs you're free to move, attack, retreat, whatever. Anyway, you have attack boost level 4, you have blast attack level 3. Blast attack increases the blast rating and build up of the blast effect on this build, and this is all thanks to the Demolition Charm 3, which, to be honest, once you get through to the end of Monster Hunter World Iceborne story, this will be a Demolition Charm 4, which will give you that level 4 blast attack. Anyway, you have Critical Eye level 3. Critical Eye increases our affinity by a set percentage. You have Weakness Exploit level 3, Free Meal level 3. Normally Free Meal can only get to level 1, as was shown with the previous build, but thanks to the Tigrex set bonus, we can get it to level 3, increasing the chance that we don't use a potion or other consumable when we take it. This is wonderful when you're going through Monster Hunter World Iceborne story for the first time and can save on materials. Anyway, you also have Speed Eating level 3. This is a byproduct of the gear, but allows us to consume potions and that very quickly, and this combined with the Sword and Shield's natural ability to use potions whilst the weapon is drawn, counteracts not having health boost at level 3. Anyway, lastly you have the Tigrex Essence set bonus, Free Meal Secret, allowing us to get that Free Meal to level 3 up from just level 1. So as you can see, it's a nice all-rounder build, this one. It would have been nice to get health boost to level 3, but like I said, because of Speed Eating, Free Meal, and the fact that the Sword and Shield doesn't have to sheath its weapon to take potions, having the reduced health pool shouldn't matter too much with this build whatsoever. On the DPS front though, you're quite strong thanks to having attack boost, blast attack, critical eye, and weakness exploit, and your DPS potential is increased even further should a monster be weak to the blast ailment. And finally, of course, having the earplug skill is a wonderful quality of life skill, enabling you to continue the fight whilst the monster is busy roaring its head off. So there we have it. Those are 4 set beginner builds that I use for the Sword and Shield in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Now of course there are a lot more endgame mix sets to come, and as I always say, you don't have to use what is shown in these videos. Use what you want to use, as most tasks in Monster Hunter World Iceborne can be taken on with any item or gear set. Also, builds taken from previous seasons can still work in Iceborne, at least for early game. They'll have the DPS, but they may lack the survivability. But anyway, I hope you found this video helpful or informative, and until next time, I've been Darkblade, bringing you beginner Iceborne builds for the Sword and Shield in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.